Hello friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another day of Bookmas. Today we will be talking about the 24 books that I will be reading in 2024. You've probably seen these lists going around, I think since 2020. So it's like the 20 books that I want to read in 2020, so on and so forth. So we are now going into 2024, and I have compiled a list of 24 books, but there's a little bit of a twist because I did ask for 14 of these 24 books to be recommended by friends and people that I just really enjoy watching on BookTube. So 14 of these are recommendations and 10 of them are ones that I just really want to get to. So we're going to start with the 14 recommendations from friends. So Gavin from Gavin Reads It All, formerly How to Train Your Gavin, recommended The Perfect Poo. I'm gonna link the video down below where he does actually read this book, so you can get the full-on experience of him reading it. That is the book that he chose for me. And then Ray from Bookmark Chronicles, she recommended The Boyfriend Project. I know that this is a romance. It's actually been on my radar, and so I'm really glad that she recommended it to me because I don't have a physical copy of it, but every time I see it in the bookstore, I'm like, I should pick this up. I have not picked this up yet, but I'm very excited to read it. Angela from Literature Science Alliance ended up picking a book from Nikki Drayden. She basically told me whichever Nikki Drayden that I wanted to read, and I chose Prey of God because I've been interested in this series. I've read Escaping Exodus by Nikki Drayden. I really loved it. Wasn't super into the second book, but I was very interested in other works by her, so I chose Prey of Gods, and I'm very excited. I'm hoping this one works for me. I think this is AI, and AI is something that's like either a hit or a complete miss for me, so I'm a little bit nervous. And then Tammy from Tammy Tries to Read recommended Chlorine, and from what I know, this is a horror. I don't know that much about it. I kind of want to go in without knowing that much because I've seen it in stores. It's a pretty short book. I'm almost 100% certain it is horror, and I'm pretty sure this was Tammy's favorite book of 2023, if not one of her favorite books of 2023. And I also think that Kayla from Books and Lala absolutely loved this one as well last year, so I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that I like it because I would love to get a copy of it. I think it's beautiful. And then Mina from Mina Reads recommended to me Silver Under Nightfall, which is another one I'm really looking forward to because vampires, but also I believe this one has polyamory in it. Also, I just always trust Mina's recommendations. We tend to have pretty similar taste, especially in fantasy and like fantasy romance. I might save it for like September and October because this book screams autumnal for me, but I don't know. I don't know if I can resist. So this next one was recommended by Noelle from Noelle 7 Pages, All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. I'm really looking forward to this, but I'm also very nervous. So previously, Sabaa Tahir has written fantasy. She wrote the Ember and the Ashes series, which I absolutely love. And so this was Sabaa Tahir's first contemporary novel, and I am so hit or miss with YA contemporary that I didn't really bother picking it up. I'm nervous, but I am excited, and I'm glad that Noelle is pushing me to read this finally. And then Becca from Becca and the Books recommended The Pomegranate Gate, which I'm really excited about because I haven't heard much of anything about this except from Becca. She compared it to two different things. I'm not even remembering both of the comparisons. I felt like one was The Poppy War and then one was that winter trilogy, The Night and the Bear, Night and Bear. I'll put it right here. But anyway, I've seen her raving about this book. The cover is so pretty. And this one is a fantasy romance. Two worlds must fight the Inquisition together or fall as one. And this is inspired by Jewish folklore. I know there is dream magic in here, I believe, or at least a dream world. So I'm very, very excited to read this. I feel like Becca and I have very similar opinions about fantasy and fantasy romance, so I have high hopes for this one. And then I had to ask my buds from the Roomies Digest. So Christine recommended Kings of the Wild. She wanted to do a buddy read of this, and I think we bought it together with the intention of buddy reading it. This is supposed to be a band of middle-aged mercenaries. I don't know if it's like they have to get back together one last time. Yeah, it's time to get the band back together. It's supposed to be humorous. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this. Ever since getting it, I've seen really mixed reviews, but I'm actually really excited. And then Mo decided that she wanted to buddy read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which I'm very excited about as well. I've seen nothing but rave reviews about this year, and and I've been meaning to get to it, I just haven't. And then Jan actually got this for my birthday, so thank you, Jan. And then the lovely Sid from Sid Bookworm recommended Malice by John Gwynne. I was absolutely not surprised by this, and I was actually very excited because I like John Gwynne's other series, which isn't completed, but it's the Shadow of the Gods series, and I know that Sid read this whole series, I think over the course of 2023, if not like 2022 and 2023. She absolutely loved it. I think it's one of her favorite series of all time, if not up there for her. And I really like the other series by John Gwynne, so I feel like this could be a new 5-star series that I could be obsessed with, and I'm really hoping so because I didn't really find that this year. So I have very, very high hopes. A lot is riding on this. This though is one that I'm probably going to take my time with because there are tons of characters from what I understand, and they just keep coming and they don't stop coming in the rest of the series. And then Daryan from Daryan Reads recommended me The Charm Offensive, and I was on the fence about reading this book a couple years ago when it came out, but I have since been more interested in this because I really loved Kiss Her Once for Me by Alice Cochrane. So now I'm extremely excited to read The Charm Offensive. The thing that threw me off about this when I first was interested in it is that it has like a reality TV show element in it. I don't usually like things that have to do with TV, but I did like Ashford Parker Doesn't Care, which has like a reality TV home renovation aspect to it. And this is a reality TV aspect, so I think I could really love this, and I'm very excited to try it out. My bud Robin from Robin Reads recommended me 7 Days in June, and I just recently got an arc of this from the library. We have arcs that kind of rotate between the librarians, and I saw this was recently put back on the cart, so I took it. So I'll have to be reading this one sooner than later because I usually just bring my arcs back so other people can read them. And Robin happened to choose this one, which great timing, and I'm excited to try this one out. I've heard interesting reviews about it. I don't know how I'll feel about it. I know it's a romance, but I've also heard that it leans more contemporary than romance because both of the characters, I think they were dealing with drug addictions and kind of an obsessive relationship, and they come back together at an older age. But I've definitely heard this is a very intense and emotional ride. And then my bestie Erin from Booked and Busy recommended me, well, she recommended me one book first, which I was very excited about. And then she decided to switch it up because she saw that A Curious Beginning ended up in my unhaul closet. My unhaul closet is just a closet full of books that I'm on the fence about. Like, do I want to unhaul them or not? I was gonna read them no matter what, probably. Anyway, she got very upset about this revelation and decided to make me read A Curious Beginning. So all I know about this is I think there's like mystery elements into it. I think it's a mystery, but it's a romance as well, like a really slow burn romance. I mean slow burn in the fact that I don't even think that they touch, kiss, anything until like 5 or 6 books into the series from what I've heard. Veronica thwarts her own attempted abduction with the help of the enigmatic German baron who offers her sanctuary in the care of his friend Stoker. Apparently Veronica, our main character, she's a scientist. She also was almost abducted. So I don't really know what this is about. And then the last person I asked to recommend me a book for my 24 and 24 was Jared. Jared is my partner, and he is a very avid reader. We have typically very opposite tastes. He is a contemporary girly through and through. He loves literary fiction so much, and oftentimes is so excited about certain literary fiction books that he makes me, a non-literary fiction reader, very excited about them. And typically, you know, I do like them. I do love a good literary fiction when I'm in the mood for it, but that's the thing, is I really have to be in the mood for it. Good thing he didn't pick literary fiction, even though he tried. He had 3 in mind, and 2 of them were literary fiction, but he went with Born by Jeff Vandermeer, which makes sense to me because aside from Neil Gaiman, Jeff Vandermeer is one of his favorite authors of all time. And funny enough, I actually read Annihilation earlier this year from Mo's bonus Read It Down on my Patreon, and I ended up really, really enjoying it. It was a surprise to me, just as much as you're probably surprised right now. And so he picked Born background because he thinks that I will have a lot of fun and that I'll potentially like it more than Annihilation. So I am excited about this. Actually, when this book came out, I was working at a completely different library than I work now, and the adult services librarian was so obsessed with this book. She was trying to get everybody to read it, and I had it checked out from the library at one point in time because of her, and I never got to it. So this is a dedication to you, Carol, who absolutely doesn't watch my videos. Okay, so those were the 14 that were recommended to me. So now the remaining 10 are ones that I've picked for various reasons. And so we'll just start with this one on the top of the pile. There's no rhyme or reason to this order. We have The Song of W.E.B. Du Bois. And this is hilarious to hold up after everything that I just said, because I was talking about how I'm not really a literary fiction girly, and I more so am not really a historical fiction girl, although it can hit when it's not about World War II. I've had this conversation many times. Anyway, I'm not gonna go into it. But when this book was first being published, I was really looking forward to this release, and I really thought that I would read it when it first came out. I've just been so intimidated by it. Look how big it is. I've been intimidated by it. I'm never intimidated by long books when they're fantasies, but when it's a literary fiction or historical fiction, I get a little more intimidated. And so I think with this one, it's another one that I really want to take slow. And I think that it's one that I'll probably read over the course of a few months, maybe, I don't know, depending on how I feel about it. So I'm really looking forward to finally picking it up. It's been on my shelf for a while now. When did this come out? 2021. I then picked The Reformatory because I've also been putting this off. I love Tananarive, okay? I love Tananarive. The Good House is by far my favorite horror novel I've ever read, and anytime somebody asks me for a horror recommendation, I usually always say The Good House, despite the fact that it is like 500 pages and hauntings/haunted houses don't work for everybody. So I've been highly anticipating The Reformatory, and I'm just nervous. I'm just nervous that I've overhyped it. So I put it on this list to force myself to get to it. And then I have Chain Gang All-Stars, which I'm really excited about, and I probably didn't even need to put it on the list to get to it. This is by the same author who wrote a short story collection called Friday Black, and I read that last year. And I enjoyed it. I just felt like it was too big brained for my pea brain. And so I had said I had wanted to actually read a novel by this author. And little did I know that their debut novel would be coming out just a few months later. So I wanted to put this on this list because I literally said in that video, if they came out with a novel, I was gonna read it. I then have The Spirit Cuts Through Water. This is by the same author who wrote The Vanished Birds, which is one of my favorite books of this year. And I have been so excited to pick this up, but then immediately became extremely intimidated by this book based on reviews from my patrons and some friends, because in my Patreon, we ended up reading The Vanished Birds and most of us just really loved it. And we all wanted to jump into The Spirit Cuts Through Water. And some of us were successful and others were not. But I have it on the list, okay? I'm very intimidated by it because apparently it uses every single brain cell that you've ever had in your entire life to understand this book, and I'm really intimidated by that. But it's on the list. I also have Some Desperate Glory, and so the reason I put this one on the list is because, like I've mentioned many, many times, sci-fi and I don't always get along. Emily Tesh is an author that, so far, I've loved what they've written. They wrote this duology, which is one of my favorite duologies, but specifically the first book is like one of my favorite books of all time. I really, really love Silver in the Woods. Drowned Country was a bit weaker, but together, love this trilogy. Okay, but the thing is, this trilogy? No, it's a duology, hun. The thing about this duology is it's fantasy, okay? It's fantastical. Fantasy is where I thrive. Fantasy is where I'm comfortable. This is sci-fi, not comfortable. I love Emily Tesh though, so had to put it on the list because otherwise I will avoid it. We then have the first binding. Need I say more? No, I love a chunky fantasy, okay? But this is supposed to be like lyrical, purpley. It's supposed to be reminiscent of like Shadow of the Wind. It's all about storytelling and it's stories within stories. And I was highly, highly anticipating this. So much so that I've started this book on like 2 or 3 different occasions. Each time I have always been very compelled by the writing. But for whatever reason, I'm just so intimidated by this and I don't know why. So I'm nervous. I'm very nervous about this. I don't know what intimidates me so much about it, and I don't know what keeps making me put it down other than it's just like so chunky. I don't even know if this is a series or not. I'm gonna assume that it is. But this is a little over 800 pages. I think other things just got in the way this year that prevented me from actually finishing this book and like committing to it. But next year, I'm trying to slow down with my reads and just enjoy what I'm reading. Similarly, but not quite, The Rune of Kings. I say similarly because I have been avoiding it simply because I've heard that it is so confusing, but also just like a really fun ride. But then a handful of my patrons, like 3 of my patrons, ended up buddy reading the entirety of this series over the course of the last year, and watching their updates has made me so excited to finally pick this up. So a couple more of the patrons and myself are going to be reading it next year. I did end up caving at one point in their buddy read this year and listening to the first couple chapters of this book, and I was invested. And honestly, it's nonstop what I've been thinking about. I wish I would have just gone for it and read it, because this probably would have been a new favorite of this year. But you know what? I think 2024 is my year of reading. I've had 2 years of mediocre reads, and I think 2024 is when the mediocrity stops. And then I have Daughter of the Forest. This is just one of those books that I've always wanted to read. I've always seen it around. I bought a copy at the beginning of the year hoping that I would end up reading this, but I never got around to it. So I decided to put it on this list. So what's better than adding it to an arbitrary list where you feel obligated to read it? Second to last, we have The Jazmin Throne. I think one of the things that has held me back is that I've heard really mixed reviews about it. Most people, the consensus is they love Empire of Sand, but they didn't really love this series, and I think part of it was like marketing. So I'm going into this with no expectations of like a sapphic romance being the forefront or the enemies to lovers. I believe that's what people's complaints were, is that it was marketed as like an enemies to lovers sapphic romance, and the romance actually really wasn't the focal point of this book, and it wasn't truly enemies to lovers, which like most things aren't. So my bar is very low when it comes to enemies to lovers. But yeah, I'm trying to go into this with adjusted expectations, and my hope is that I'll end up really loving this series. And then lastly, you're probably gonna ask yourself, why would this be on your list? Because you've been talking about how much you're excited to read it and how you think it's gonna be a 5-star read. And that's exactly why it's going on my list, because I'm horrible apparently at predicting 5-star reads for myself. And so I'm now very intimidated that I'm not gonna love this book as much as I'm hyping it up in my brain. And that is The Book That Wouldn't Burn. I weirdly have not read anything by Mark Lawrence, despite being interested in various different series by him. I have not read them. So I have really no expectations going into this, except that I'm gonna love it just solely based on reviews, but also the synopsis is so intriguing to me, and I truly want this to be my Starless C. And I don't know why I keep getting Starless C vibes from the synopsis and from this book, because no one has ever compared it to the Starless Sea. Don't go into this thinking this is the Starless Sea. My brain just keeps connecting these 2 books, and for me personally, I didn't enjoy the Starless Sea. So I want this to be a book that I'm obsessed about. Will that happen? I don't know, but I'm really hoping, and I think this will be one of the first books of this list that I actually read, because I want to read it in January so badly. Okay, so those are the 24 books that I am supposed to be reading in 2024. I'm really excited about it. It's such an eclectic selection of books. There's something from most genres in here, so I can definitely mood read with this list. And hopefully I'll be vlogging like chunks of me reading various books from this list. I'm not gonna do a whole vlog of 24 books. No one wants to see that. But I will definitely have a collection of vlogs where I'm reading books from these lists. And I'm just hoping that 2024 is the year of bangers for me, because all I want is some more 5 stars. So I think this year I only had like 5. Anyway, friends, let me know down below if you are doing a 24 and 24. I would love to know some of the top books in that list for you, or some of the top books you're anticipating reading in 2024. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye.